Hello and welcome to the Daft Souls podcast. It's me, Matt Lees, joined by just one other person today, but it's a good one. It's a classic. It's Mr. Chris Bratt.
A classic. Hello, Matt.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem that long ago that you flipped over your desk, you stormed out a video gamer, never to be seen again.
I know, right?
And here we are.
It was great. I flipped over all of the tables.
Yeah, I have to use that desk now. I mean, come on, dude.
I know, it's completely smashed to shit. I know, for a quick one for that, we won't be self-indulgent for long, but some of you who listen to this podcast may well have started off by listening to the Video Game Podcast, which is obviously where Chris is from. If you haven't heard of that, then Chris is, you'll get to know him throughout this podcast. So what have you been playing this week, Chris?
I have played a couple of games. I've got into Dota 2 real big. Wow. I don't know if you want to start there, because I imagine you talk about that quite a lot.
Actually, you know what? I haven't. I've tried to avoid talking about it too much because of the fact that I'm aware that I got into a habit of the Video Game Podcast of just talking about Dota 2 and Dark Souls.
It's so frustrating. I try and do the same thing, and the rest of the team don't play those games, and it doesn't always...
well, no, actually, as another reference for those of you who do listen to the Video Game Podcast as well, this will be a landmark occasion, the fact that I will let Chris talk about any game he wants, and I will not belittle him. So go for it.
It's so difficult. But yeah, with Dota 2, I think I'm on 90 hours now, or 95 hours, which... that's a lot of time to spend in one video game. Yeah. And yet, unbelievably, I still feel like such an amateur. I don't know all the heroes. I have my own little pattern. I can play Bristleback because he's got loads of health. And I've kind of got my own groove.
Yeah.
But step outside of that and everything was real bad.
Bristly B is a good choice.
Oh, he's awesome.
I like him a lot. He's brilliant at chasing people down. He's so hard to get away from.
I think my problem with that game is that I've always been... I'm over ambitious, so I do stupid things. I will chase when I shouldn't chase, and Bristleback has a bunch of health, so you don't always get punished for it.
No, you don't.
So, yeah.
And to be honest, it's probably better in Dota 2 to be over ambitious than it is to be cowardly. I find the people I get most frustrated playing with are the people who don't have the balls to try something, even if it might be suicide. But the great thing, for those of you who don't follow, obviously Dota 2, it's basically it's like fancy American football without the ball, where you just two teams pushing backward and forward to try and control the map, and gradually as you...
Some of them are mystical creatures.
That's I mean, basically,
actually all of them, really.
Almost all of them are mystical creatures. But there's this thing of basically that you have your defensive towers, they have theirs, and you have to destroy all their defenses and then destroy their main base. Basically, every time you push forward, at first you're just fighting, you're just trying to get kills so you can basically deny them experience and get something for yourself. It's kind of obvious RPG based stuff, but it's the complexity comes in the fact there's over 100 and something characters now, maybe 120 or 115.
Yeah, I know about 4 of them really well. That's it.
That's the thing, you do get to a point with those two where you're not going to improve until you start, and this is a big jump, and you start playing the random, I think.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how I learned the game when I started. I forced myself to pick random every time because you get a nice little gold bonus when you start. But it also means that you're playing a bunch of different heroes, and even if you're not very good with them, you'll at least understand how they work when you next face them.
Yeah, it means when you're up against them, you know what their strengths are, you know what their weaknesses are.
It reminds me of when I used to play the competitive PvP in World of Warcraft, and that had the same kind of thing. I ended up playing with every single class a little bit just to get a feel for them. Not because I really wanted to play them, but just so I knew how to kill them properly.
A lot of it is about overriding the fear as well. Yeah. The fact that it's very easy to be like, oh, it's that guy, run away.
Oh God, Pudge, right?
Yeah.
How do you meet Pudge? He's terrifying. He's absolutely terrifying.
Magic is quite good usually.
Okay. Right, magic. Good.
Or just generally, rail on him. The main way to beat Pudge is don't get hooked.
Nice.
Yeah. Which is easy enough. But Bristleback is great just for context in the fact that he has a huge amount of armor on his back, because Bristleback is basically he's like a massive hedgehog.
Yeah.
And it means that he's great because when you realize you're in trouble, you can run away, and it means that the damage that you take is so heavily reduced, and they take damage from it if they keep chasing you and harming you.
Yeah, that's right. And so the moment usually if you're being chased, you're in a really tough spot, but sometimes with Bristleback it can be like a...
Well, some characters you say they have, this character's got great escape, which means that this character's really good at getting away from trouble. Whereas Bristleback's escape is just the fact that he's a fucking hedgehog.
He's a fucking hedgehog. He's awesome.
Yeah. It just means that he's all the spikes from his back, and it's great. I've had matches before where I've really stomped with Bristleback and got all the items for massive health regen.
Yeah.
Well, you just become invincible.
That's kind of how I try to play it at the moment.
I had a point where I was actually at one point on my own trying to attack their base as Bristleback. Ran up the hill, started fighting them. Their entire team of 5 came and started attacking me while I was attacking their base. And even with all 5 of them attacking me and casting all their spells on me, I just ran, and they were slowing me down and stunning me and doing all this stuff so much, but they chased me all the way back from top. All right, so it was at the bottom lane of their tower, and they chased me all the way back to the middle lane of my side, and I got away. It was hilarious. It was like all 5 of them, and I was like, guys,
anyone
I might need some help here. And then everyone was taking such a long time to get to me, but it was just hilarious. It was like, they can't kill me. They literally can't kill me.
I had a similar thing where everyone in the game, other than myself and my friend who were playing, left on my team, which, you know, it pretty much means we've lost the game. We knew that, but we still managed to hold on, and you know, we lost with grace. And at one point, I launched out of our base to try and defend on the towers, and was chasing 3 of their players away from me. That doesn't happen in this game usually. Like, if you know, something you've had to either out-leveled or completely outplayed your opposition to take on more than one opponent at a time, and it's not advised with certain characters. So it was this wonderful moment where the rest of the team, who massively outnumbered us, were running away whilst I was just chasing after them as a giant hedgehog. That's kind of why I like Dota 2.
It's class. That is. I mean, do you feel like after about 90 hours, because I've played it now for about 900 hours, it's kind of my game. It's not so much my game right now, though. Obviously, I've just moved house. You probably always tell there's a bit more echo in the room at the moment.
It's a very lovely house, Matt.
It's very nice, but I need to sort out some sort of sound protection at some point. But yeah, like I don't play it so much now because of the fact that I am currently, my office is in like the living room, which means that in the evening, which is when most people play Dota, usually my girlfriend's back, and I feel comfortable enough to be like, you watch TV and I'm going to play some video games. That's not a problem. I don't do it very often, but I do it sometimes. Get my headphones on, but I don't feel comfortable to be like, you watch TV while I sit here on Skype as well, talking to a bunch of really lovely stoners who I play Dota with.
That's exactly the same. Minus the stoners maybe, but I talk like with the couple of guys that I play with. And I do it in the office, usually after hours, because I don't like doing it at home sometimes, which is weird because I'd have to be in the living room, and you like. People don't understand, man.
No, they don't.
They're my Dota friends.
That's it. I've played so many hours of Dota with people. Like, I've got people who I've spent hundreds of hours with who I've only met once for a couple of hours. But I feel like I know them so well just through playing so many games with them, and also just chatting between games. I think I said this on the video game podcast ages ago, but it's like you get to know people so fast when you play Dota with them.
You know if they've got your back, man. Like
it's not just that. Like you really get a feel for people. It's so intense and requires such high levels of communication and
it's like playing a sport. I know people get very touchy about particularly the word esports. Yeah. It is like being in a sports team.
But I've noticed I've never really done that. I was always a weird lone wolf when I was a kid. I didn't like playing team sports. I like doing things like rock climbing and fencing. I'm fucking weird, but so I've never really felt that, but I kind of get the impression that maybe that's it. Is that the stress that you're put under and how you react to it and how you react to it to other people and how you deal with other people under pressure. It's like it really brings people out quite quickly, and it quite quickly you realize there are people who you don't like, and quite quickly there are people who you realize who you really like.
And like bad sportsmanship in games like that can rally you up so badly. Like even like whether or not you played it, like when you finish a game, you usually type GG, good game, absolutely. Or say well played or something. When people don't do that, or very obviously avoiding saying good game, which is the etiquette.
I usually always say GGWP.
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's been a horrible game, I just say WP.
Nice.
Which is like,
I think that's fair enough.
It's like you've played well. Yeah. I've had a horrible time.
I didn't enjoy this game. You played this well.
You did well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's difficult actually, because especially morale can crush a game of that. And Valve doing some really interesting things and continue to do really interesting things, trying to work out tools for the community to make sure that people behave properly.
Yep.
A lot of people who don't play these games actually will say, "Oh, I tried to play Dota or League of Legends, but the community was horrible." And it's like, well, no, it's just the community are often quite highly strung because they're very invested into it. They're often quite knowledgeable, and unfortunately, because of the nature of the game, when you enter a game and you realize that the people who you're playing with don't know the game, that's incredibly frustrating because you're almost certainly going to lose.
Yep.
Because that's just the way it is.
Even sometimes a single player that doesn't really get what they're doing. Because different to a lot of other games that I've played competitively, like dying in MOBAs, like games like Dota, League of Legends, is such a big deal. So if you have just one player that doesn't really get what's going on, new to the game, dies 5 or 6 times, that can
that's the thing, because there is an element of skill in it, but it's not like a Call of Duty, for example, where you can have one player who's just phenomenally good, and it doesn't matter if everyone else on the team is terrible because he's going to shoot every fucker in the head about 20 times. You can only do so much. Because you can only be in one place at a time, where obviously with Call of Duty you can have someone who's almost sort of omnipresent, cycling the map, cleaning up everything. It doesn't work like that. And so I think that there's a lot of frustration. But also it's like, it means that whenever I'm playing a game and people start arguing, there's nothing worse. It's like when you have a team that start arguing with each other, it's like the death knell for the game. It's like, this game is dead.
And it almost always happens at the start because there's 3 lanes, and like often people will have a lane that they really want to have with their character because it makes sense. 2 people want the same lane, that can cause some disagreements.
I think that's a bigger problem in League of Legends from what I hear. Apparently in League of Legends, like, a lot of people just quit the game if they can't have the lane they want. Whereas I've not seen it that much. Sometimes you have things where you're like, okay, fine, you have it, fine. But those kind of arseholes don't seem to pop up that often. But it's more that, like, when things go bad early game, people start arguing, and it's like, oh, we're dying because you're not helping us. Well, we're dying because you're crap. And it's like that thing of, I think I always say the same thing. I say, don't fight, just play. And it's like, a lot of the time that works. Just that simple message, don't fight, just play. People tend to go, all right. Because like, if people get too fixated with sitting and typing, they're not playing anymore, and you've lost.
Yeah, definitely.
But it is nice occasionally, because I always do try and like act as a force for good.
Yeah, I think I do as well.
But you feel like often you're not having any kind of impact. But one of the nicest times was actually, I think it was last month, where I was playing, and this guy on the other team said, one of the guys on our team, who was an arsehole, started like saying really nasty shit to this guy. He's like, oh, I killed you again, you fucking, and said some horrible phrases I won't repeat. And then the guy on the other team said, fuck you, fuck your mother or something. And,
classic. And
I said to the guy, I typed and said, hey man, there's no need for that. And he said,
put your hand on his shoulder virtually.
And he was the guy, the thing is, to be fair, he was the guy on the other team as well. So I was like, there's no need for that. And he said, yeah, but he was being, and I said to him, I said, yeah, but he's a dick. I said, he's a dick. Like, you don't have to do that.
And it's like being a primary school teacher.
And he literally was great. He just went, yeah, you're right. Yeah. And it was like, wow, I was not expecting that. Like,
rational response.
This guy was like, shit, yeah, no, just because. But that was nice, because it was that thing of the fact that the guy who was an arsehole was on my team, and the guy who was. You do kind of get that feel sometimes, how it's like, you do often, you're not, even though you are opposed, it'll be like, hey, can you please report this guy? And the other team will be like, yeah, sure, he's clearly an arsehole. So that's nice. I mean, there are pockets of genuinely good eggs. And every now and then I've bumped into some teams of people whilst playing Dota, where we've had some games where I'm playing like with 4 of my friends, and we're up against another 5 stack of people. And they're just hilarious. Like the things they're doing and the stuff they're saying, it's like, yeah, these guys are really funny. Like they're really cool guys, whoever they are, wherever they are in the world. And that hasn't really happened to me in many other like games, where you just get a real sense that like the people you're up against are are genuinely really cool guys.
To be honest, I'm really enjoying having. I mean, since starting this job, I've only been doing video gamer for about just over a year now, and it means that we have to keep up with all the new releases that come out, and often the video content we'll do will be initial impressions, that kind of stuff. We don't always get to really invest ourselves in too many games at once, because...
And how are you finding that? Because I find that's one of the most interesting things about working in games media, is the fact that it changes the way you play games. Because
completely.
Before, you just get very invested in single titles for months, and then might play a new one, but you can't really do that.
Honestly, I've needed a game like Dota 2, which I don't do any video content with. I've only played 90 hours. Can you imagine if I tried to impart any wisdom?
What a noob.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice to have that game that I can just reliably go to, not think about video content later down the line, and there's this community around it, and it's a nice game to just completely relax with. It has kind of changed how I approach other games though. The new releases, I struggle to just sit down and play them like I used to. I'm always thinking, crap, I should probably be frapsing this.
No, that's exactly it.
I'm sure you have exactly the same thing.
I've been doing it for a long time, but it's really funny how it does change these things.
It hasn't lessened it, it's just changed the way you approach games.
Yeah, it does change it. It does change the way you play them as well. And sometimes it lessens it slightly, but I mean, obviously the advantages of it are fucking awesome as well, so I'm not going to be like, oh, it's terrible having to play video games. But it's funny because it does mean you end up being things like, I've had games where I've stopped myself buying games. Like I got a little Steam voucher for Love Houses, 40% off, nice. Right? And I thought, I'll play Love Houses. And I stopped myself because I was like, no, Matt, you said you were going to make a video about why FTL was an interesting game.
Yep.
Then you said you were going to make a video about you on a spaceship on FTL. You've also been playing So You've Been Hunted. You said you make a video about that. You've still got those XCOM videos. You haven't finished Dark Souls 2. Yeah. And it's like, but also I found myself, I know that I would have finished Dark Souls 2 weeks ago, if not for the fact that I was recording video diaries and knowing that I was going to produce a video about it, because it means that I don't sit down to play Dark Souls 2 as if I'm playing a video game. I sit down, I switch my PC on, I start capturing, I have to be thinking, and it means that when I'm just on a weekend and I'm like, I just want to play a video game, I actually find sometimes I want to play video games less because I know I can't just enjoy it. Even something as simple as making sure I'm capturing it right and making sure I'm recording bits properly and remembering things and making notes.
I think the way you tackled the Dark Souls thing is probably a good step in that direction, because it allows you to keep the playing separate from the recording. Like,
that's the thing,
you haven't got to talk whilst you play. You haven't got to, Dark Souls is a game where you can have like, you can repeat the same area. When we streamed it for like 2 hours, and like,
good Lord,
you don't have to show that in video. You can approach it in a different way. I'm really pissed off that you did that, by the way, because I wish I'd done that now.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's like an original idea. I think other people have done it before. For me, it's just like I don't really like the idea of Let's Plays, and that's why.
Especially with a game like that, I think.
Well, the problem is it means that then, like, whenever you're playing that game, it feels like work because it's linear. You can't just be like, hey, I'm going to play for 3 hours and not do anything, not record it, because it's like then people will go, well, I've just missed 3 hours.
Yep.
So you have to, every time you do it, you have to be broadcasting, you have to be recording. And I think that's fine if you're the sort of person who does Let's Plays, which are kind of like not Let's Plays, where basically you are just sitting there occasionally going, wow, cool. Yeah, I killed you. But it's like, I want to make something entertaining. And so it's like a blessing and a curse. But it's that funny thing of being like, well, this works as a format, but it's still some work. Yeah. And it is annoying because it's sometimes, I mean, I do it with XCOM because I've played XCOM already so much that it's almost like, I don't mind doing that because I know it so much. But when you experience something for the first time, it's a hell of a lot of a kind of impact to have. So fair play to those guys for doing it. But anyway, but what I've been playing this week actually is I've been playing, as I say, I've been playing tons of XCOM. And it's fucking good. I mean, I know it's fucking good, right? Everyone knows XCOM's fucking... Well, if you don't know XCOM's fucking good, you should really get on that because...
Game of the year, 2012, 2013.
Almost. It's close, And I didn't even realise how good the expansion was until, like, really the past couple of weeks. Because now I've, like... Even though I reviewed it for Video Gamer, actually, and I still, it was kind of one of those things where I thought, well, I haven't played this to death, but I know it's good.
Yeah.
But now I actually realise that, I was right. This is fucking well good. All the stuff they've added, like all the new options, all the new things you can do, like it's brilliant. And the meld is horrible. And in fact, it's like you spend the whole time being like, oh, I didn't get much meld this time, but it's fine. It's fine. I don't need that much. Yeah. I don't need that much. And then it's like you get to the point where you're like, I need more meld.
I think that's actually my favourite change. Like, and mechs are freaking cool. Psychic powers, I'm all about that. But the idea that added time constraint within each game, they did it with certain missions, like when you had to disarm the bombs, like that. They've taken that idea and spread it out across the game, and I think it works really well. As an expansion as well. If you've already played Enemy Unknown, I think having that new limitation is something you really need.
It forces you to get out of your habit.
I wonder actually if maybe like people who are starting with Enemy Within, if they are doing it injustice because of that.
I get asked
I didn't think so at first, but I'm starting to edge.
I get asked that a lot because I'm a real proponent of XCOM. I think it's possibly one of the best games ever made, which is amazing because it's a remake of one of the best games that's ever made, and they're both great for different reasons. But a lot of people always say, oh, should I get the original or should I go straight for the expansion? And it's like, I don't know. I suspect you should just get the original and play that for a while.
Yep.
Because the thing is, like, and I'm still trying to talk my dad into doing this, and the fact that he's just finished XCOM.
Right.
But he was playing on, I think, just normal mode.
Ah, right. Oh, God, it's an entirely different game.
And I know, right? And he's basically, like, he texted me the other day going, oh, I've just finished it. It's, he's like, oh, the last level was quite easy. And I'm like, yeah, it is a bit easy, but it's like...
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, I keep saying to him, you need to play classic Iron Man. And it's not one of those things, because I hate when people get snobbish about difficulty and being like, oh, you haven't played the game unless you completed it on super hard mode. It just changes it.
It absolutely does. Like, the tension when you have, you're taking one of those shots and if you mess it up, you're going to possibly lose someone. When you're playing on classic, you're at a disadvantage because the enemy have a slight edge in that regard. But the Iron Man aspect of it, the fact that you can't retrieve that save file is amazing. And I'm not sure why I did it really, but I'd never played an XCOM game before Enemy Unknown. And I started...
A lot of them were shit. Like, the first two were amazing, but then a lot of spin-offs... Sorry. I stupidly bit into an ice cube in my mouth.
That's ridiculous.
And then just became a wobbly bastard. But no, you haven't missed out a huge amount. But carry on.
Yeah, I just starting with classic Iron Man. Like, I'd never played the games before. I think I restarted that game. It was definitely more than 15 times, and I think most people shouldn't approach that game in that way. I'm not really sure why I did, because I had no experience with it, and yet I adore. I've got such fond memories of those restarts. I can't.
No, same.
It's kind of how we were talking about Dota before, and I was saying I can't imagine playing that much of a game and still feeling like a noob.
I don't even remember what number I got to.
How can you do 15 restarts and still love the game?
What I love about XCOM is the way that when you start a new game, it tells you on the save file, it has the game number. And it's like...
Oh, God, yeah.
I don't even remember, because I played it so much. On the Xbox, I finished it on normal mode with normal saves, and then I restarted Classic Iron Man. And I played through Classic Iron Man. I completed it twice, I think. And I don't know how many times I failed to complete it along the way. But it's that thing of being like... I don't know. I think I must have had like 21, 22 games. But even now, it's like I'm playing on the PC now. And throughout the process of all I've done it for is I played it a bit for review, and I played it when I did the episodes of the Let's Play for Video Gamer and the episodes I'm doing now.
Yep.
And still, I'm on game 8 apparently. Iron Man. I'm like, I've failed 7 times.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I've hardly played the PC version at all. But it's like, I obviously have because I've restarted the game 8 times.
It's brilliant as well. Like this is another weird thing, which I can't imagine doing with many games, but 15 restarts, right? Every single time I personally renamed each character and gave them, made them look different in terms of armor and stuff. And that does get tedious after a while, but I did it 15 times.
What I love about XCOM,
those characters became so important.
They do, but what I love about XCOM though is it's almost like, and it reminds me of there's one of my favorite authors, sadly died last year, Ian M. Banks, who writes the culture novels. I can't recall. I think it might be the first culture novel actually, Consider Fleabag, which sounds pretentious, but it's actually just a fantastic read. I'd highly recommend it. I think, it begins with the idea of this sentient shipyard producing this highly advanced ship, and every ship in this production, every ship in the world, they've actually got AIs that are sentient, and they're given a name when they're produced. So every ship has a name, a unique name. But it's this hopeless factory who's like the mother of the ship, produces this ship, and it's one of the most advanced ships ever. But there's like thousands of cruisers of enemy ships about to destroy the planet, right? As it finishes building this ship and sends it out. And in an act of kind of hopelessness, this AI factory describes it, just doesn't give it a name, because it's just like, it doesn't matter.
God, that's a pretty great comparison.
I hit that point in XCOM where I start off giving them all names and and I get to a point when I'm just like, I end up buying new recruits.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, fuck, I need more people. And then I just stopped naming them. I'm like, it doesn't matter anymore.
I say I renamed every character. I won't name recruits. I lost so many, man. I can't do it. Like
you can't bear to lose them again.
I can't invest myself in that recruit, because the chances of that recruit getting upgraded and becoming a decent member of the squad probably at 50-50 on Classic Iron Man. The way I was playing it, I was like, you know what? No, if you become a heavy or an assault, I'll give you a name. You'll get some facial hair.
The first batch are like they're all right, because basically
terrible.
The first batch, right? They're up against sectoids. They've got a good chance of survival. They've got a good chance of ranking up. But when you get to the point where you're like literally chucking rookies and squaddies up against mutons and stuff, it's like
they can die in one hit.
You're probably going to get killed.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to give you a name. But the funny thing is, I'm actually at a state now because I've been recording like tons of XCOM videos for my playthrough, because I want to just almost like record the entire series in advance, which is now proving to be an incredibly huge amount of work.
How many episodes do you think it will be?
I don't know.
It depends if you complete it, I guess.
But that's the thing. There was a point, actually. There's a point in an upcoming episode, and this I don't even remember. This might be weeks away. It might be a month away. But there's a point where I have some serious. Everything goes so smoothly for such a long time, and it's why, to the point that I almost think, why the fuck would anyone watch this series? It's so boring. Everything's just going really well.
Oh yeah.
And then there's a point where, for a couple of missions almost in a row, everything goes so badly, to the point where I'm just like, I've lost this. I've lost the game. But then I actually managed to pull it back, and
it makes it all the sweeter, doesn't it?
It's incredible. Honestly, the expansion has thrown some insane. I had a mission the other day, and I won't spoil the specifics because I know a lot of people follow the series, but it was an act of obscene desperation. It wasn't even one of the, because there are some wonderful in the expansion. There's one mission in particular that involves docks.
Right.
And some ships. I won't say more than that, but there's one mission that's a set piece mission, which I'm generally against in XCOM because I like the randomized nature, but this one is amazing and it fucks you. But everyone I know has come away from that mission being like, yeah, I lost loads of people, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
Just because it's like a beautifully crafted thing. But it wasn't one of those. It was just a standard mission. But I ended up in a situation where it was something like 12 enemies coming at me. So I found way too many enemies.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it? Finding enemies is the most dangerous thing.
It's oh.
Yeah.
And then I had 3 men left. And they weren't even good men. They weren't even
Tell me this. No, actually, I don't want to
say this. And that's the thing. Is I kind of, it was one of these situations where it was just I went full on crazy in the fact that it was it doesn't matter. I can't do this. I'm fucked. Oh. And so I started playing the game in a way which most people would think was insane.
Yeah.
And I started doing just consistently insane stuff. And I won't tell you how it ends, but it goes on for a while. It's actually the first episode I recorded, which ended up being I kind of thought to myself, it's it's been way past 40 minutes now. I usually try and give it about 40-50 minutes. But it was just my heart was in my chest pounding for about half an hour straight. It was just it was one of those things where, but when I got to the end of it, I was like, fuck, this is why I play XCOM.
It's crazy to think that so many games try so desperately to make you care about characters, and particularly if a character dies, they make it into such a big moment, and it's care about this character. And yet weirdly, these XCOM soldiers that repeat the same lines all the fucking time, and they, you've given them some facial hair, but they don't all look that desperately different. And yet, if one of those characters dies, if you've invested so much time into one of them, that they're high ranking, they've got some decent equipment.
It's not even just that you experience sadness at the loss, it's shock.
Yeah.
I found when I've been playing, I'm in shock. Mm-hmm. They get killed and I just don't say anything for 10 seconds. I don't know what to say. I just can't believe it that they're dead. And that's an incredible achievement. The thing about XCOM is so many people I know who are I don't really like that sort of thing. It's if you're one of those people listening, I've said this hundreds of times already, but do check it out, because you may be listening at the moment going, why are they? It's for a game that is turn-based, it is so exciting.
Yeah.
And especially on Iron Man, just the fact that you find yourself really strategizing. A lot of the time you're just moving people around, shooting aliens, it's all fun and games. When you have these moments where it's oh God, and you need to devise a plan, and that plan needs to be perfect. It's so exciting and thrilling when you pull it off.
Yeah, I don't want every game to take that approach, but it's it's brilliant to have options like that. And obviously the roguelike genre's come back like crazy. There's games like DayZ where you could put so much time into collecting equipment and, you know, kitting your guy out only to run into someone who betrays you and you lose it all. And those are some of the most powerful moments I've had recently playing video games, like compared to like these, like, you know, this, you know, important character's going to die, please care. Like it's weird that, the random nature of it as well.
The emergent narrative has always been like a really, really big deal as far as I'm concerned. Like, I mean, that's why I got so into like Battlefield Bad Company and stuff. Like, just when those games first came out, having these tight little experiences where the stories can just emerge from what's happening around you, is just so exciting, and so much more exciting than often mainstream games attempts to create these exciting narratives that often are just a bit shit. But yeah, XCOM I've been playing so much, and it has reminded me the expansion's so good. There's some really, really smart stuff, and I've had some horrible situations. It's even just stuff like the fact that I hadn't realized how smart a lot of the fixes are, in the fact that obviously they've fixed the obvious thing in the fact that they've invented the new electronic squid monsters that mean you can't do the classic thing of just being like, well, I'll just keep a sniper at the back of the map on his own. And it's like, oh, okay, well, the squid monster's going to choke him to death. Well, I'll keep 2 snipers at the back of the map. Okay, well, the squid monster's going to choke him to death. And it's really hard to hit things with a sniper rifle at close range. It's like, you fucker.
It's great to see an expansion that has, you know, clearly been designed around, you know, the choices that players have been making.
It's gaming you. The thing is, they worked out how players were gaming the system, and then they fixed that. And I love that. And it's why, again, one of the things that reminds me, XCOM, makes me think XCOM is so much like a board game, in the fact that it's almost like they realized that, not that there are problems with the game, because obviously there were loads of bugs and stuff that needed fixing, but more just being like, oh, hang on, players have worked out this way of gaming the system to make it easier, so we're going to change the rules so they can't do it. And it's like, I thank them for that, because they stopped me from being a boring bastard.
Yeah. I bet there's some like smug satisfaction in being able to do that as well. Obviously, you know, there's so much gameplay of Enemy Unknown on YouTube. Obviously, the team will have been following a lot of the stuff the community is doing. They're like, man, people are real. The squad side snipers, people are abusing this. You know what we should do? Invisible squids.
Invisible robot squids.
It's brilliant, like that. Being able to just develop a new enemy to tackle that. It's cool.
So good. And even the fact that the whole Exalt terrorist cell thing, what they do is basically, unless you're spending quite a lot of your money to scan for cells and send out people, and unless you're constantly, whenever you're not doing one of those missions, spending money, and it gets incrementally really expensive. So it's kind of it's not that easy to do that unless you are really letting other things sag. The cells will affect you, and they'll slow down your research, and the worst one is they take half of your money. And it's not like, you know, cheeky little elf taking your money in a video game where you kill the elf and get it back. It's just gone. It's basically like, and the thing is, at the moment, I thought I gamed the system by having a mad rush for money, and I got shitloads of satellites up. Got shitloads of bonuses.
That's one of those things that you gain the system in unknown. And this
it's fucking me, because it means every month I get this fat check from the world, right? And it's like, I almost wish I was paid weekly. Come on, guys. Because it's like, I cashed this ridiculous check, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got so much money. But then immediately I'm terrified. I'm like an elderly man hiding the money under his mattress. I'm like, I can't keep this money. I can't keep this money. It's not safe. It's not safe. And so I end up just spending it, and not even spending it often in the wisest way. I'm just like, I don't want to keep it.
It's better to spend it on something
than lose it. Because obviously it's like when you lose, you know, when you've got $200 in the space bucks in the bank, then you lose 100 space dollars. When you've got 1,500, you lose 750, and that's like, I mean, that hasn't happened to me, but if it did, I would literally be screaming and knocking over tables.
It's interesting that you can kind of do a King Rob of the North with that. Like, you can win every battle and lose the war still if you don't get that stuff right.
That's completely the game, though. It's just the fact that you have to make a decision all the time. It's like, are you going to focus on the tactical game or the strategic game? And the mistake that most players make is focusing completely on the tactical, and like just spending all their money on arms and equipment.
I mean, to be fair, it's pretty tricky when someone rocks up and says, "Would you like to give me some money, I'll give you some laser weapons, or would you like me to build some satellites? It's tricky. It's tricky not to go, laser weapons. That sounds really cool.
Because it's like, you know, the difficulty you face constantly is fighting the fucking aliens. And so you have that period where if you're not careful, you're like, we're kicking the asses of the aliens. But then it's like, you're not doing a very good job of protecting the entire world, though. You're just like, and it becomes that kind of American thing of being like, ugh. I mean, have you read the book, what's it called? Oh, I think it's, I've forgotten the bloody name. They just made a bloody World War Z. Yeah, made a film about it. The World War Z book is incredible. It's like written in diary segments from or interviews, a collection of things. But it's this idea of telling the story in retrospect about how the zombie apocalypse happened. But it tells it from like so many different perspectives, from like really personal family perspectives, but mostly like researchers, soldiers, strategists, politicians, and it's an incredible book. I really recommend it. But there's a wonderful thing about the fact that how really early on it's like the American army just have this really showy thing of being like lining up and just using all of their like really high-end weaponry on all the zombies and stuff, because they're so confident that it's like it ends up being like the whole thing of being like, yeah, but you've moved your entire fucking army here. It's like that's what kind of what XCOM feels like. If it's like, I haven't lost a mission in 6 missions. It's like, yeah, but have you got any coverage of Asia?
Yeah,
because Asia's got a lot of aliens.
Asia's starting to freak out a little bit right now.
I don't know. The replay value of that game is obscene. Yeah. I must have put about 150 hours into it, and I only spent like about 40 quid on it. Yeah. I don't know how well the expansion sold. I hope it sold well.
I'm really unsure about that.
Especially because 2K were like, well, we'll do a sequel if the, and I'm like, oh, don't tease that. You
obviously,
fucks.
like the Bureau, which was the kind of spin-off, didn't do it amazing.
Didn't do it. I mean,
and didn't really have the XCOM feel to it in a lot of respects. But yeah, I hope Enemy Within did well. It is a hard game to market, though. I think
it is hard. I mean, it's one of those
even
games
to people that have played Unknown until you really delve into it.
Well, the problem is, like the original version of the game is just a fun game that you finish, but until you actually sit down and go, all right, let's have a go on, classic Iron Man. That's when the game it's just so it sounds like a snobbish thing to say, but it isn't. It's just you don't really appreciate the game you're playing until you play that, because it's just immediately just changes the entire game.
I remember when we first heard about it and we saw some of the previous stuff, we kept, I think the expression was like, oh, it could just be a box of toys.
I was really worried about that.
Yeah, especially when they showed off the mechs. Yeah. It's like, that is, mechs are cool. I can't deny that. But is that really what that game's about? And obviously they have worked into it really nicely, but there was a danger there of them just going, people like the cool
people like toys. Yeah. But it's so difficult. I mean, like even just repairing mechs costs meld,
and you can't.
It's horrible.
You can't market that feeling, really, can you? It's hard to get that across to people until you play it.
And the wonderful thing is, you can't market the feelings of it, and that's what's so difficult. Is when you try and tell people that it sounds like the usual bullshit. The games, you'll be so invested in the story. It's like, but there's nothing grimmer than I had a moment earlier in the week where I'd spent some meld repairing a mech suit, because it's not like with armor and weapons, it's quite flexible. If a soldier dies in them, it's like, don't worry, you can give them stuff, to someone else. But
the mechs are attached to them.
They're physically attached to their bodies and they're damaged. And it means you then have to be like, well, it's going to cost me like quite a lot of meld just to repair this suit.
I hadn't even thought about that. I was thinking you could just give that to another person. You chop off their arms or their legs when you attach it.
And that's another equally wonderfully grim thing in the fact that it's like, as part of the process of making them suitable for wearing this mech suit,
they're sacrificing themselves.
They have to basically cut their arms.
Which again, you feel you can't help but think about that, and yet these characters don't really have their own personalities.
That character will never speak.
It onto them.
Yeah, that character will never speak. There will never be a cutscene with that character. There'll never be a dialogue section. They'll never have a bit where they talk about how hard it was. It's just
the best you get is actually if you go on the armory and you click on like a memorial or something like that.
You see their name
and how many kills they got and how many missions they did before they died.
Yeah.
And that's all you get. And that's weirdly enough.
It's almost like I can't look at the wall anymore. Yeah. Like in any game, whenever I click on it by accident, I'm like, oh, there's too many people.
Yeah.
Because also it makes you feel bad in the fact that you grieve so heavily for those who are your heroes. but you immediately forget all of the squaddies
Until you see it all in the list.
Until you see it all.
All the ones you hadn't named.
And the worst thing is, right, and I think this is why XCOM is a masterpiece, is the fact that when people die, it's not you feeling bad. It's not empathy. Or sympathy. It's you're sad, but it's greedy. It's you being selfish, and it's the fact that you are really, the fact that your best unit has died is like, it's a massive inconvenience to you.
Exactly. It's not guilt that like that character's died and their story arc is finished. It's that you can't now use like your
best
high-ranking assault in the next mission, and it's really pissed you off.
And your rookies are freaking out and hiding,
shooting each other
because they've lost all hope, and you're angry. You're not sad. Sometimes you're shocked and you're distraught, but you're never sad. You're angry. And the worst thing is I had a moment earlier this week where Meld, this precious thing they add in the expansion that allows you to do all of the cool mechs and gene modification, etc. I ran out, and it was so precious to me that I had a mission where I just basically got this squaddy fresh out, right? And I'm like, you son, come with me. I put him in the lab, I cut his arms and legs off, put him into a mech, sent him out into combat. He'd done some heroic stuff, but he died on his like second mission. He died. And I didn't even take a second to go, oh, you're dead.
It's like,
I was literally just going,
fucking miles I just spent on you. You dick. Why have you died?
I become that guy from RoboCop who's just like, this is an incredible investment. You can't shut this program down. It's cost us this much money. And I was like,
right.
I did not care one jot that guy was dead.
Yeah.
I cared that it had cost me that much money to repair that suit, and now I couldn't use it again. And I might not be able to use it for like half a month.
Oh,
and I was like, God damn it.
Jerk.
And that's the thing, is it just turns you into a fucking monster. It still remains. It's one of those things where it's always been one of my favorite games, but playing it a lot in a concentrated period again to record my videos for it has just reminded me that it's a masterpiece. It really is. I've given a handful of games in my time 10 out of 10s, but XCOM is one that just like, fuck me.
Yeah.
Woo. Anyway.
Excellent. This is a surprise, isn't it? You and I are in a room and we talked about Dota 2 and XCOM.
Well, that's fine. It's fine. I mean, what's lovely about Daft Souls, I think, I say this to the deeply grumbling listeners now going, oh, for fuck's sake, is the fact that because we have different guests every time that people talk about different types of games. And come on, if you didn't know me and Bratters by now, then you would have been able to guess this was going to be quite a geeky one. But yeah, quite a specialised one this week, I think. But it's probably good for both of us to get out our systems. But let's try let's try and make it a bit more general now with some questions. We'll do an extended question period just because usually I forget and just do one.
Right here.
So, first off, this is an easy question from Connor, aka the Toasty Base. Why does the question of whether a game is fun to play or not often get lost when critiquing games? I'd say it doesn't. You're probably just reading the wrong reviews.
I think so. I think that's it, isn't it?
Most of the reviewers who I love focus very strongly on whether or not a game is fun. It means I don't read as many reviews these days because I find a lot of reviewers don't handle that as well. I think probably one of my favourite reviewers is Andy Kelly, Ultra Brilliant on Twitter, because he doesn't fuck about. He's a man with a deep appreciation for art and design and craft, but his reviews are always very much like, why is this fun?
Yeah, and you've got to remember you're playing a video game, and usually you play video games for fun, and that needs to be your primary focus, I guess.
It's true. I guess it can be difficult to forget though, especially when I'm doing like features and stuff. Like
it can be very easy to get distracted, I guess.
Because it's like I'm playing Dark Souls 2 a lot at the moment in the process, and I'm planning to do a big critique of it when I'm done. And I don't, I kind of think when I do that, it's easy to forget that it's fun. It is a fun game. There's lots of stuff that's really good about it. There's lots of stuff that's really bad about it. It's easy to forget that. But then, when do you need to know that? I mean, I don't know. I mean, games being fun, that's like one of the many qualities they can have. They can be interesting. Like, I mean, XCOM is great fun, but it's also one of the most painful games I've ever played.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I think one of the games that like dominated the discussion last year was Papers, Please. And that... I'm not sure if I would necessarily describe that game as fun, actually, but that wasn't always the major talking point about that game. It wasn't that core element. It was about everything else surrounding it. And it is easy to get distracted, particularly when games are doing things very new and very different.
The problem is, I mean, sometimes if it is a game where it's like, I want to know if it's fun or not. Like, it depends what kind of a game it is. If I'm reading a review of Mario Kart 8, I want to know if it's fun. Like, because that's a game that looks fun.
Yeah.
Is it as fun as it looks? Let me know. Whereas, like, I don't know, with Papers, Please, it's like, yeah, I'm sure it is. I've heard good things. But it's like, the whole... it's the same thing with films. Like, you might people just say, oh, come on, it's just a film review. Why can't you tell me if the film's entertaining? It's like, well...
Not all films are actually trying that. Yeah.
I don't know, like, the films I've seen that have been horrible... And if someone said, oh, is that a good film? Is it entertaining? I'd be like, I don't know if it's entertaining. I had like a really unpleasant time watching it. But
would you say Papers, Please is entertaining? In retrospect, I have a lot of fun talking about the game and the decisions I made.
The process of playing it is quite unpleasant. Yeah. And I think that that's an interesting thing in the fact that sometimes, and this is a fascinating thing for me, and Papers, Please and Shadow of the Colossus, I think, are like two poster children for the idea that games don't always need to be fun. Games can be unpleasant. They can make you feel something unpleasant.
Yeah.
And bits of like lots of games I've played that I've really enjoyed have done that. Some with more success than others. But yeah, so I think that's kind of... I think that the argument of saying, oh, why can't we just tell whether it's fun or not? It's like, well, because games aren't always supposed to be fun. And it doesn't mean that they have to be... That isn't necessarily a pretentious thing. In the same way that like... horror films aren't really fun, A really good horror film, like Funny Games. You ever seen Funny Games?
No.
Yeah. This is the same.
Is this one of these goddamn 1980s things I've missed?
It's the same conversation. No. Have you seen The Thing yet? Though you got to watch The Thing.
I didn't really watch many horror movies until
John
recently.
Carpenter's The Thing is kind of a horror movie, but it's more of a psychological grind in the snow in the Arctic. It's a classic.
All right.
It was widely despised by critics at the time because it was too negative, whereas now it's just perfect. But no, Funny Games is like a kind of horror film that's supposed to be the antidote to violence in films, and rather than making violence seem sexy or like appealing, it makes violence out to be what it is, and actually does that by never showing you the violence, just having noises, and it's horrible. It's so unpleasant to watch, and yet it's a really, really good film. And yet if somebody said to me like, I guess that's that equivalent of going, oh yeah, but is it fun or not? It's like, hell no, it's not an entertaining thing. Like, I didn't watch that and slap my knees. I watched it and went, oh god, but it's an experience I'm glad I had. I think it sounds wanky, and this actually ties into another question. Somebody, let me just see. This was from Ben Naylor, who said, any thoughts? No, that's not it. I've lost it. Somebody else asked about the whole people critiquing stuff like Gone Home for not being a game.
Yep.
And it's the same thing, isn't it? It's like, well...
I don't want every game to be like that, but I'm thrilled that games like Gone Home and Papers, Please are trying to do more than just, more than just be a fun video game. They've got a message.
I think the thing is, you can't pick your targets, can you? Because, I mean, I look at The Walking Dead, and when I was playing that, I was like, is this a game? Because there's not a lot of game there. And yet, because it's got zombies in it and it's more immediately likable, people don't really question it as much.
That's another one. I'm not always having fun when I'm playing that game. In fact, I'm often not having fun. I feel terrible. But it's one that... It still does something that I really value in video games. Like, I love talking about that and thinking about the stuff that's happened. I'm not sure I'm having fun when I'm playing it. So, yeah.
That's the same thing.
If you review that game, can you need to talk about other things.
Oh, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it. It doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be. And I think that's what's nice about games is I think sometimes, and the thing is, I don't think that's what games should always be, though. That's the thing is, I still want fun games.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, pick your targets. Like, I mean, if I read a review of, I wouldn't go into a review of like The Walking Dead and being like, come on, is it fun or not? It's like, oh, it's obviously not going to be fun. Having read this review, I'm aware that it's quite harrowing.
Yeah.
It's like if somebody came out of it going, honestly, like when you're cutting people's legs off and terrified that you're going to die and clenching your anus because you're worried that someone's going to murder everyone.
It sure is
it's
swell.
So much fun. I've never been happier in my life. You have to be a bit of a psycho for that.
I'm really enjoying that second series, by the way. I wish I knew when the Walking Dead games were coming out. I feel like they just spring them on us.
Were we talking about this at the pub or something, actually, about the whole... Because I've been keeping away from the Walking Dead series too because of the fact that I really want to see how the whole series arcs out this time. Because I really didn't like the whole Clementine thing. Were we talking about that? I think we were.
I think so, yeah. And I think we were debating whether or not the best way to play that game is having all, access to all episodes in one go, or, whenever Telltale decide to release them.
It's just one of those things where I feel like I thought the original story arc was so perfect in itself that it's like I don't want to read it if it's going to spoil that.
Yeah, and I know what you mean. And to be honest, I was really underwhelmed when Clementine was announced as the protagonist.
You didn't seem sure after the first couple of episodes. Have you grown on it?
I know I did. To be honest, the only thing I was unsure about was I didn't really know what the story arc would look like. That first episode... whereas in season 1, you know that your entire journey is looking after Clementine, making sure this girl either, gets to a family, survives, just, you've got to look after her. That's your mission. It's less obvious in season 2
where you're going,
what the end result will be, which is interesting. And to be honest, I'm completely turned around. I really like Clementine as that main character. It works for me. I still don't really know where it will end up, so I don't know what to say about that story arc. I've got ideas of where it's going, and they are bringing some interesting things back from season 1, which tie into that nicely. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what the final point of that season is, and if it's even the end of the Walking Dead Telltale games. I think it might be just because of how much they're taking on board.
Yeah.
But it is their flagship, isn't it?
They have got their risk of they must be spreading themselves quite thin at the moment. I don't know what their workflow process is, but it kind of feels like if they're not careful, they're going to be back to where they were. And the fact that, remember when they were putting out kind of vaguely shoddy games all the time because they were clearly trying to do too much?
I think it is affecting them as well because... are you playing The Wolf Among Us still? Or
I played the first 2 episodes and I was very underwhelmed by the second episode. I have the third episode because I have the whole season.
The third episode does pick up, but the problem with that series is it's just the pacing of it's been so weird. I mean, I feel like I've been playing that very short amount of that game for an awfully long time, and at least. With the television series, you have a kind of structure to it. It doesn't feel like there's any structure to when these new episodes are coming. And I shouldn't have to read recaps of what I did last time. That shouldn't be necessary.
No.
You lose something there just with the big gaps between each.
You're right.
One.
And I certainly felt in the second episode that they had cut out a lot of the illusion of choice.
Yeah.
For the sake of getting it out. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that often it is illusion, but it very much felt like I was being guided through something.
I think it's always illusion. I think The Walking Dead does a better job of disguising that. Yeah. I think with one of the interesting things with The Wolf Among Us is because you play a detective and you do detective things, you'll often have a choice of which crime scene to visit.
Yeah.
And it seems that the game always wants you to go to a certain path anyway. Like you may miss certain things, but you'll always go to the same scenes every time you play. It feels that way anyway. So it feels like less of a branching path than Walking Dead does.
Like missed opportunity with all the detective stuff. Just because, and mainly when I play any game that has that sort of thing, I just go, just do a bit of Phoenix Wright stuff, please, because it's like. I don't know, it would be so cool if you actually had a bunch of evidence and there were some red herrings and you had to make some, and it would be a thing maybe affect the story slightly by letting you actually come up with your own theories rather than it just being search the room, find the 4 clues that are relevant and then being you've done it.
End of the third episode, I don't think they're going to do that. I think it's turning away from the detective stuff from what I can tell.
It just
a game where choices are so impactful, it is a shame that you aren't really given the option to make a wrong choice. I know Telltale are all about every choice is wrong in a way.
Yeah.
And so it is difficult to balance that.
Mind you, I've been playing the Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright game.
Right, yeah.
Because I was talking about that with some other people on an earlier podcast, and I'll probably talk about it again in the future when I've got further into it. But it's still I still, even though it does all the fantasy stuff, I fucking love Phoenix Wright. There's something about it. Although it's just so weird, with it's not. It's a weird combination because the Professor Layton stuff just feels so funny. It's this funny thing of being oh, I've got a puzzle that you need to do. And it's just it's almost like it apologizes for itself by being you just want to get on with the story stuff, and all the story stuff is in the Phoenix Wright bits.
Yeah,
so we'll make the puzzles quite easy, just so you don't have to do it for very long. And there's just some incredibly daft bits where it's there's some bits where it's oh well. you can't look at this unless you prove yourself to be a genius. Here is the hardest puzzle in the world. And it's like, you do it in like 30 seconds. And it's just like,
you are a genius.
Did you do that? And it's like, this is like a fucking word search, right? Like, this is easy. I could do this for breakfast.
Does that not get a little bit frustrating that it is that easy? Or do you feel like the game is aware of it?
Weirdly, it does, yeah. Like, weirdly, it's like I would be less frustrated if it was a bit harder because it almost feels like they know that the puzzles are going to slow the game's pacing down, and so they've made them really easy.
Yeah.
So it means you spend more time just like cycling through crap dialogue. That's like, because the dialogue is always like always trying to invent a clever way of being like, oh, here's a puzzle.
Yeah.
Rather than, it might as well just people going, you've got this puzzle.
Yeah.
it's always like, oh, I appear to have lost my cat. But the thing is, there are 8 different cats on this road. And you're just like, look, just give me the fucking puzzle right now. It's just, I mean, it kind of works within the context of latent games on their own because it's like this quirky world where everyone's puzzled.
But when it's mixed
but when you mix it with anything else, it's just like, why doesn't like Phoenix Wright always get stopped by people who want to do puzzles? Like, why is it just you? Have you got a sign on the back of your top hat that says,
puzzle me.
Give me puzzles or I'll kill you or something? It's just really, really weird. Anyway, yeah, I'll talk about that again in the future, I'm sure. But let's have a quick look. There's a couple of questions actually about our thoughts on Nintendo's response to the Tomodachi Life me quality complaints. And people have asked a bunch of questions about actually. I mean, some people have asked about, as reviewers, does that put a stain on future reviews, or is that unprofessional? I mean, I'd say probably yes. However, I mean, as a kind of a solo entity, it does affect potentially what I cover. I think that, you know, letting it change your opinions of future products is just a very bad thing to do. However, like, there's no reason why you can just not spend less time covering the games. And also, like, some people have said, like, what are your thoughts on Nintendo's next steps combating the losses posted this week? It's like, I think they've got bigger fish to fry at the moment, frankly. I don't really give a fuck about them losing money. They've got to get their house in order. I mean, my line on the Tomodachi Life stuff, I've written a script. I'm going to record a video about it tomorrow. But I mean, generally, it's just fucking appalling. I'm genuinely quite appalled.
It's a little bit embarrassing as well, because another thing, since starting this job, I've spent more time than I used to, not justifying video games, but trying to explain to people unfamiliar with them that they can tackle these, mature themes. It's not just, the stereotypical teenager in their basement shooting zombies. That does still exist and it's really fun, but there's other things. And I feel like it knocks me back a step or two.
I mean, it's not even representing mature themes. It's just such a step back from the... I mean, but for those of you who don't know, basically there's a situation where this game, Tomodachi Life, came out in Japan. Nintendo made a press release saying, "Oh, there's actually a glitch in the game." They said, I think it's a funny glitch that means you can, if you're a man, you can get married to a man, or if you're a woman, you can get married to a woman. And a lot of people who are playing the game just thought that was kind of a feature, and were like, "Oh, it's a glitch," and they were like, "Yeah, we'll patch it out." They patched it out, and then obviously there was a bit of an uproar for that because people were just going, "Well, when you release it in the West, can you maybe put that in as a feature?"
Yeah, and it just
and Nintendo of America have come out and said, "We won't be putting it in." And worse than that, their response was to say that Tomodachi Life is just a fun, silly, whimsical adventure, life simulator. And it's not supposed to be a social commentary. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What decade are you living in, guys? Like, is this back in the century even, really?
Like, we joke quite a lot about Nintendo being an old-fashioned company in the way that they approach a lot of things. And, Nintendo don't care. It's fine. They've got all these, they recycle their games. They do it their way. They're old-fashioned, but that's funny. That's Nintendo. This is old-fashioned in a completely different way.
Yeah,
it's just, come on, they're one of the biggest and most well-loved companies in video games, and they don't seem to care about a big portion of their audience.
I think what the most worrying thing about it is there will be people who will just go, "Oh, who cares? It doesn't matter that much." It's like, well, it does. I mean, obviously, just because it doesn't matter to you, it doesn't mean it doesn't matter. But almost secondly to that, it's just a very weirdly hateful thing to do. It's not a nonchalant thing to do, right? To do that is to basically alienate a chunk of the world, quite a large chunk, really, of potential consumers without any benefit of that.
It's not something they've forgotten to put in the game. There's been a number of conscious decisions along the way there that have meant this.
And it's like, why? They've chosen to alienate a market for no extra profit. And that's just something that companies don't do. And also, if they'd just done it locally in Japan, if it had just been like, you know, fair enough, all right, then it could be like, because lots of people just go, oh, it's just Japanese culture, actually. You shouldn't be critical of it, another culture. It's like, all right, there is an argument to be made for that. But when it comes to localization, it's like, well, localize it for the different cultures then, because you know what, over here, the thing that makes me saddest, I mean, this is an all very like condensed version of what I'm going to make tomorrow, but the thing that makes me most sad is the fact it's like, up until now, I don't play a lot of Nintendo games these days, right? But what I like about Nintendo is a lot of people, you know, hate it, but they are trapped in that kind of old-fashioned cycle of just making the same things again and again. And the beauty of that is it means it's timeless, and it means new generations can always enjoy it. And, you know, I was, up until today, and up until yesterday when it happened, I was like, well, yeah, when I've got kids, I really look forward to just sitting and playing Nintendo games with them. And now because of this, I feel like I need to screen Nintendo games, because I wouldn't want to give that game to my kids. And I'm sure there'd be lots of homophobes who'd say the same thing if there was gay marriage included. But I mean, kids can latch onto things like, especially when you're growing up, you get an idea of social status and how the world works by media largely. And I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I latched on to like weird phrases and stuff, or was that something that somebody had said? And then I really thought, oh, that's what the world's like.
There's going to be a case where, you know, there are going to be a lot of younger people playing Tomodachi Life just because of the way it's presented.
Yeah.
There's going to be, someone will ask a question, like, you know, to their mum or dad, why can't these two men like have that relationship?
Yeah.
Because they won't maybe understand it. And that question's going to be, for a fun, whimsical video game with all the weird Nintendo stuff, brilliant. Why? As if that question's going to come out of it.
I think the problem is you could argue this from both sides. I mean, obviously the other side are arseholes, but basically you could have people saying, well, I don't want my kids saying, why can these two men get married? And it's like, well, you're a dick. But that's what it feels like. It basically feels like Nintendo have taken quite a cowardly approach of knowing that they'd rather irritate progressive people than they would irritate regressive people and, like, you know, very conservative types. And it's just like, is that the business decision you're making? Because if it is, I'm going to take my money elsewhere. Like, because you know what, like, if the Rayman Origins games Rayman games are fucking badass these days. I can live without Mario. My eventual kids can live without Mario. They just like, I mean, I think I'm literally stealing the phrase from Steve Hoggerty, who said it on Twitter the other day. It's just the perfect analogy. It's like Nintendo saying, oh, we don't have any opinions on eating delicious cake, say Nintendo, whilst eating delicious cake. Yeah. And it's just like, they're acting like they're sitting on the fence, but it's like, you've chosen a side, and now you're saying you don't want to get involved? I'm
surprised another statement hasn't been made since that, to be honest. I can't believe it's been left with that.
When it's getting reported on the BBC site and stuff, you know that you've probably fucked up. But I don't know. I mean, the whole thing is just, it's very sad. And it makes me sad because of the fact that I know that there'll probably be because I mean, like, you know, you were saying about like going to your parents and asking stuff. There are going to be kids out there who don't have the luxury of a relationship with their parents where they can have these kind of conversations. Yeah. And there will be, maybe it's just a handful, there'll be gay kids who will play Tomodachi Life, and they will read into that implication that in this game you can't.
Fuck that, man.
And they will not talk to anyone about it. And they will be years later, they'll be fine. They will be fine in the end, but they will read into that implication that in this fun, family-friendly game, you can't do that. And if they're at a stage where they're already like, it's not helpful, right? It's just like, I mean, that's the thing, is games always used to be like that. Okay. Like that was just like Harvest Moon, you know?
Yeah.
You can't sort of have an orgy in the barnyard with anyone you fancy. It's all very, very kind of traditional, straight stuff. But when, like, the whole selling of this game is like, you can live the life of your dreams, you can do what you want. I think it literally says, I think the tagline of the game
it's your life, isn't it?
It's your life, you can do what you want, live your dreams. And it's like, it says the real world is too small for your dreams. It's like, well, this is not too fucking small minded. Yeah. Bang. You will hear that.
That is a good line.
You will hear that line in the video tomorrow. Sorry. I apologise in advance.
Just put that on the trailer run.
There's some good lines in it. I'm looking forward to it. But it's bollocks. I'm actually like, I mean, I wasn't going to buy a Wii U anyway, really, but I think I'm definitely not going to now. Until they can sort their shit out, I don't really want to support them. I've got a 3DS. I'm very tempted to move it to a Vita. I'm just horrified by it.
And it's like one of, you know, annoying thing as well, Tomodachi Life
It looks fucking
looks
awesome.
like a really fun game. Like watching that Nintendo Direct was really entertaining. Like it was all the wackiness that I want from Nintendo games. And then I think it was like immediately after I'd finished watching that, I had a big smile on my face. I went to tweet a picture of Reggie with his top off, and then I tweeted it. And then a couple of moments later, I just read something about the fact that in Japan they'd taken this out as a glitch, and I went, oh,
that's the thing. I'm gutted. I would have played it and loved it, but now I don't. And I think that's what people forget is it's not just that they're alienating gay people; they're alienating anyone who cares about people, and that's basically it. It's like I don't really want to show my support to that product because I think it's weirdly hateful.
Yeah.
I mean, if they'd done it by accident and not responded, it would have been like, okay, that's just fucking dumb. But the fact that they've come out and been like, yeah, we don't want to make any waves, it's like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing you've also got to remember is that kind of messaging, that kind of like a press release from Nintendo America, that's gone through a lot of people, right? Like, that's not just somebody who sent that out and then is getting a slap on the wrist now. Like, those things get approved. They go through levels of approval.
Yeah.
And like, I just amazed that anything like that came out and nobody at any one point went, whoa, guys.
Like, yeah.
We can't.
There is a message we have to say here.
This is quite horrendous. Like, even if we just apologise, even if they just said, sorry, we can't really do anything about it now.
This is what we're going to do in the future.
We'll make sure we'll think about this more. Like, that's all they would have had to do. But no, I mean, it's one of those things where I think a lot of the time there's a lot of rage and ire in the games industry and a lot of people being like, oh, fuck this, I'm boycotting this company. But I mean, I'm not going to be like, I'm straight up boycotting them. But I'm definitely going to think a lot more carefully about giving them money in the future, which is a shame because I do like them as a company. They make fun games. Yep. But yeah, they've got a lot of, that's bad shit. I'd rather give my money to a company like EA that whilst gamers might hate the shit out of them, at least they've got a track record of actually giving a shit about people. But anyway, I think that's probably, stretching away from the microphone, that's probably a good time to wrap it up. Other than, I think somebody said like, oh yeah, Brat's going to do stuff. I'm sure we'll have Brat on in the future. Yeah, I'm sure we'll have Chris again.
It's been great. I've enjoyed it. We've talked a lot of XCOM.
A lot of XCOM.
Always on board.
Apologies if you are not interested in Dota or XCOM in the slightest, but seriously, they're good games.
You're missing out on some really cool stuff, man.
It's better than that fucking Nintendo misogyny, Guff. Honestly, you should be ashamed. Thank you very much for listening, as ever, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.